So the clean energy transition, the whole drive toward net zero.
Well, it was supposed to be the great global unifier, wasn't it?
That was the hope, yeah. A shared mission.
Powered by innovation collaboration,
Yeah,
not uh, isolation.
exactly. But well, the stack of sources we've been diving into today's show is
Yeah.
it's a far starker reality, more fragmented.
It feels like the transition hasn't just become, a business opportunity.
Mhm.
It's actually morphed into the central battleground for the next great global power struggle.
Absolutely. It's a conflict over subsidies, definitely, over supply chains, and I mean, ultimately, it's about sovereignty, isn't it?
Sovereignty over the tech itself.
Precisely. We are absolutely witnessing this monumental, really fast-paced shift. We're moving away from those old principles of global free trade
Yeah.
and heading toward these protected sort of regional economic ecosystems.
The fortresses?
Kind of.
Yeah.
And the prize here isn't just dominating today's battery market or, solar panels. It's about controlling the technology that's going to define the economy for the next 50 years. So today, our deep dive is really tailored to unpack exactly that unfolding reality. We want to show the escalating global trade fights over electric vehicles specifically.
And how China's, well, its aggressive industrial power is forcing Western allies, even major players like Canada, into what looks like an impossible choice, a geopolitical trade-off.
Right. We've got the figures, the dates, the strategies laid out here, and they really demonstrate how these geopolitical fences, they're being built faster than we can even get the EVs on the roads.
Our mission today is kind of twofold. First, let's dissect that unified tariff wall the West is putting up, and then look at Beijing's really strategic counter moves.
Okay.
And second, we need to analyze how Chinese giants, and BYD is the big one here, how they're proactively pivoting, shifting their massive expansion plans towards the global south, specifically to get around these tariff walls.
Bypassing the West.
Essentially, yes, this isn't just, standard protectionism anymore. It feels like the beginning of a truly divided global green economy. Two separate tracks.
Okay, let's start with that broad overview then. The global EV trade war. We kind of know the core conflict, and our sources define it pretty clearly. I've got Western countries, the US, the EU, Canada, accusing China of industrial overcapacity.
Which is, let's be honest, a somewhat polite way of saying it.
Right. It means the Chinese state has pumped so many subsidies into its EV and green tech sectors that its companies can produce goods at prices that just fundamentally undercut everyone else. They risk bankrupting foreign competitors, distorting global markets.
That's really the heart of it. China's ability to make and export EVs, batteries, solar panels at prices consistently 20 to 30% below their global competitors. That's not seen as just, good efficiency.
No.
It's framed as an existential threat, a threat to manufacturing jobs in places like Detroit, Bavaria, Ontario, you name it.
And the immediate weapon, the one the West has deployed almost in sync.
High tariffs. Really high punishing tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, batteries, solar cells, the whole package.
And the consequence, as you said, is this rapid fragmentation. The global EV market is splitting apart. It's a clear move away from globalization, away from free trade, towards these protected regional zones, like the one the U.S. is desperately trying to solidify across North America with CUSMA.
Which brings us smack into the middle of probably the most compelling and honestly the most painful test case playing out right now, Canada.
Canada's Golden Deal dilemma.
Exactly. Our specific source material here is dated October 24, 2025. And it details this, diplomatic and economic trap that Beijing has laid out quite masterfully.
It really is an extraordinary piece of, what do you call it, coercive trade diplomacy.
That's a good term for it.
Yeah.
China publicly offered to lift its punishing retaliatory tariffs on a key Canadian agricultural export, canola, specifically.
Huge for the prairies.
Absolutely huge. If Ottawa reverses the 100% tariffs it just slapped on Chinese-made electric vehicles.
Wow. Linking those two directly.
And that's what makes it so unique and, frankly, so problematic under standard trade rules. China is explicitly linking two completely unrelated trade issues.
It's not like they're negotiating the price of cars or access for cars.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They're leveraging the very real economic pain of Canadian farmers to achieve a strategic geopolitical goal related to the future of industry, clean tech, EVs.
And critics must be calling that out, right? Under WTO rules.
Oh, definitely. Critics are pointing out this linkage is a pretty clear violation of the WTO's non-discrimination principles. You're not supposed to link concessions in one sector to demands in a totally different one like this.
But it's not just theoretical leverage, is it? It's creating an immediate high-stakes trade-off. And it perfectly highlights Canada's deep, almost paralyzing great power dilemma.
It really does.
Yeah.
Canada finds itself caught. It depends heavily on the U.S. for its security umbrella, its overall economic framework through CUSMA. But at the same time, it's equally dependent on China as the single largest customer for some of its most vital commodity exports, like canola.
So now they're forced to choose. Who do you alienate? Who do you align with?
And this choice, it's incredibly symbolic, not just for Canada, but for all middle powers globally.
How so?
Well, Canada, a major G7 economy, a significant global player, finds itself in a position where truly independent trade policy feels, well, virtually impossible right now.
Trapped.
Trapped between Washington demanding a united front, absolute solidarity, and Beijing demonstrating its willingness to inflict very surgical, very painful trade retaliation if it doesn't get its way.
Okay, let's unpack the different dimensions here, the global tariff chessboard, as you called it. Before we really zero in on Canada's specific canola versus cars pain point, we need to understand the scale of this Western wall that's going up.
Right.
And then look at China's massive and, as you said, highly strategic countermoves.
Okay. The Western push has been aggressive, no doubt, and it's been escalating rapidly, especially in the United States.
Where did it start, really?
Well, the roots of the tariff conflict, you could trace them back to 2018. That's when the U.S. initiated what are known as Section 301 investigations.
Okay, what are those?
Basically, Section 301 allows the U.S. Trade Representative, the USTR, to investigate and potentially penalize what they deem unfair trade practices by other countries.
Right.
Initially, under Trump's first term, the focus was heavily on things like intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer by China.
So it wasn't just EVs back then?
No, it was broader.
Yeah.
But that laid the groundwork. The actual economic blockade, specifically targeting the green tech sector, that really ramped up more recently.
Right. The numbers, when you look at them chronologically, they're just staggering. Under the Biden administration, May 2024 rolls around, and tariffs on Chinese EVs were already quadrupled, jumped straight to 100%.
A huge leap.
And they didn't stop there. They also slapped a significant 25% duty on lithium-ion batteries and 50% on solar cells.
And the justification there was twofold, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. First, protect American jobs. The estimate cited is around 8 million U.S. auto sector jobs, potentially at risk.
A powerful domestic argument.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And second, secure critical clean tech supply chains. This ties directly into the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, which aims to onshore manufacturing and specifically excludes components from foreign entities of concern, meaning China, from accessing those very lucrative U.S. subsidies.
So build it here, buy it here, and keep China out.
Pretty much. But then, according to our sources, the U.S. stance just went into overdrive with the return of President Trump in 2025.
Things escalated even further.
Dramatically. On October 10th, 2025, he announces an additional across-the-board 100% tariff on basically all remaining Chinese imports, effective November 1st.
Wait, so not just EVs this time? Everything?
Virtually everything, according to the reports, a blanket tariff.
Wow. So what does that do to the EV tariff specifically, if you layer that on top?
Well, that's where it gets truly astronomical. You compound this new 100% general tariff with the existing 100% EV-specific tariff, plus you factor in some of the smaller residual duties from the earlier 2018 rounds.
Okay.
The effective compounded tariff rate on a Chinese EV trying to enter the U.S. market now exceeds 247%.
Let's just pause on that number. 247%.
Yeah.
That's not an economic barrier designed to, level the playing field or offset subsidies anymore, is it?
No, not at all.
At that rate, you're talking about a legislative, essentially complete total market blockade. No importer, no company's going to pay that kind of duty.
The market is effectively sealed shut.
Completely. The goal seems singular at that point.
Yeah.
0 Chinese-made EVs entering the United States, period.
Okay, so that's the U.S. approach, complete wall. What about across the Atlantic?
Yeah.
The EU has also mobilized, right? They're trying to defend their own Green Deal ambitions and, crucially, their massive automotive sector.
Hugely important for them.
Yeah.
You mentioned the numbers, 13 million people employed directly or indirectly. It accounts for nearly 7% of the entire bloc's GDP. The stakes are incredibly high for Europe.
So how did they approach it? Did they just follow the U.S. lead?
Not quite. The EU's approach was, well, arguably more measured, more procedural perhaps. It started back in 2023 with a formal investigation.
Right, I remember that.
And that investigation concluded officially that Chinese EVs are indeed somewhere between 20–30% cheaper than their EU counterparts, specifically because of massive state subsidies flowing from Beijing.
So they confirmed the core complaint.
It did. But their response wasn't a blanket 100% tariff like the U.S. initially did. They seem to be trying to find that tricky balance between deterring what they see as unfair competition, but without completely slamming the door shut on Chinese innovation, or, more importantly, without triggering a massive reciprocal trade war that could devastate key EU exporters, like German car makers who sell a lot in China.
Right, they have more to lose, perhaps, in direct retaliation.
Potentially, yes. So what they did was roll out provisional tariffs first, back in July 2024. Then these escalated to definitive duties by the end of October 2024. And the key thing here is the rates vary.
Up to what level?
The maximum potential rate cited is 45.3%. But these rates are specifically calculated based on how cooperative the individual Chinese companies were during the EU's investigation.
Ah, okay. So it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. For instance, a company like BYD, which reportedly cooperated fully with the investigation, faces a lower additional tariff, somewhere around 17%.
Okay.
Whereas companies that were deemed non-cooperative, like SAIC, which owns the MG brand popular in Europe, they face much higher duties, around 35.3%.
And how does that get to the 45.3% figure?
You add that company-specific anti-subsidy duty onto the EU's existing standard 10% tariff that applies to all imported cars. So for SAIC, 35.3% plus 10% gets you close to that 45.3% maximum.
Got it. So it's still a significant barrier, much higher than before.
Oh, absolutely. It makes Chinese EVs considerably more expensive in Europe.
But it's still a world away from the U.S.'s effective 247% wall.
A completely different scale, yes. It reflects, I think, a more cautious, perhaps more negotiation-minded European stance, trying to apply pressure, but maybe leaving the door open a crack.
Okay, so we have this clear, multifaceted Western wall going up. Varying heights, but definitely a wall. But China isn't just, sitting back and filing complaints at the WTO and issuing statements, are they?
No, far from it. They're deploying extremely strategic countermeasures. And what's really striking is how they're hitting where the West is arguably most strategically vulnerable.
Oh, which is where?
The clean energy supply chain itself, the inputs.
Ah, okay. Tell me more.
What's really critical here is China's surgical precision in picking its weapons. Our sources indicate that effective October 2025, Beijing significantly tightened export controls on rare earth minerals.
The ones needed for magnets, batteries.
Exactly. They now require special licenses for any exports of these materials destined specifically for the EU and the US.
And China dominates that market, right?
Completely dominates it. China controls over 70% of the global supply of these 17 essential elements. They're not just vital for EV batteries and motors, but also for advanced wind turbines, sophisticated military tech. The list goes on.
So this is Beijing basically reminding the West.
You can build walls against our finished goods, like cars, but remember where the essential ingredients for your own green transitions come from.
It's massive leverage in any negotiation. It's choke point.
Huge leverage. And their retaliation specifically against the EU tariffs has been, well, politically quite brilliant in a ruthless sort of way.
How so? They didn't just put tariffs on German cars going to China.
No, they've largely avoided a blanket trade war that would hurt their own massive export machine too much.
Right.
Instead, they launched very targeted anti-dumping probes and imposed duties on specific politically sensitive EU exports.
Okay, give us some examples of that political targeting. What kind of products?
Well, pork, for instance.
Yeah.
China imposed anti-dumping duties of up to 62% on pork products coming from the EU.
Pork? Why pork?
Think about who the major EU pork exporters are. Spain, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands. These are countries with significant agricultural sectors and powerful farming lobbies that hold considerable political clout domestically and in Brussels.
Ah, so hitting them where it hurts politically back home.
Precisely. It creates internal pressure within the EU. Similarly, they targeted high-end luxury goods. They launched anti-dumping probes against European brandy and spirits. Aiming squarely at powerful French producers, particularly the cognac houses. France, of course, was a major proponent of the EU's EV investigation.
So it's very calculated, inflict maximum political pain on key member states, pushing the tariffs, pressure Brussels from within.
While simultaneously trying to protect China's overall global export structure. They also launched probes into dairy products, again hitting key agricultural producers.
It really is a classic example of weaponizing economic interdependence, isn't it?
Absolutely. Beijing officially views these Western tariffs as discriminatory, protectionist, violations of global trade principles. But their response isn't just rhetoric, it's carefully calibrated economic warfare, designed to maximize leverage while minimizing self-harm, which tragically brings us right back to the painful reality facing Canada.
Caught in the crossfire.
Completely. And what's so fascinating and frankly worrying about the Canadian situation is how its position as a middle power, utterly dependent on the U.S. for security and market access, yet also deeply reliant on China for commodity demand, exposes the sheer impossibility of maintaining an independent trade policy right now. They are being forced, quite literally, to choose sides.
Let's trace Canada's steps here. Their initial move was back in August 2024, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Imposing that 100% tariff on Chinese EVs.
That's right. It came shortly after the U.S. and EU moves.
Right.
And it was clearly presented as an act of solidarity, an attempt to align with the U.S. under the CUSMA agreement, the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement.
The successor to NAFTA.
Exactly. And aligning with that broader Western industrial front against perceived Chinese dumping. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government justified it publicly as a necessary defense against that tidal wave of subsidized industrial overcapacity flooding global markets.
Protecting future Canadian auto jobs, essentially.
That was the line.
Yeah.
But China's retaliation was, well, swift, brutal, and strategically targeted right at Canada's most economically sensitive pressure point, agriculture, specifically canola.
They didn't waste any time.
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
They launched that anti-dumping probe specifically targeting Canadian canola and then imposed duties up to a staggering 76% on canola seeds and an absolutely devastating 100% duty on canola oil, meal, and also related products like peas.
100%. That just kills a trade dead, doesn't it?
Instantly. The economic impact was immediate and crippling, particularly hitting those agricultural powerhouses, the prairie provinces, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta.
And we have numbers on that.
We do. Our sources highlight that exports of canola from Saskatchewan alone to China plunged by an astonishing 76% in August 2025. That's the month immediately following the imposition of those Chinese retaliatory tariffs.
76% drop, just like that?
Gone. And to understand the real weight of that number, you have to grasp the scale involved here. Canadian canola exports to China totaled $3.6 billion in 2024.
$3.6 billion.
Yes. That single market, China, represents nearly half of Canada's entire global canola trade.
Wow.
So losing that market isn't just some temporary inconvenience or a dip in prices. It represents the potential devastation of entire rural economies. It means sinking commodity prices for farmers, acute financial distress for countless farm families across the prairies. It's an economic body blow.
And this pain, this immediate economic shock, has basically ignited an internal conflict within Canada, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's pitting different regions and different sectors against each other.
Absolutely. You've got this fierce internal battle, the Feed the Fields lobby, mainly from the prairies, versus the Protecting the Future Factory lobby, centered more in the industrial heartland of Ontario and Quebec.
Tell us about the agricultural side first, the Feed the Fields plea.
The agricultural heartland is united, vocal, and frankly, desperate. Provincial leaders have been leading the charge. People like Manitoba Premier Wap Kinew and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, they've been hammering Ottawa, demanding that the federal government accept the Chinese deal, drop the EV tariffs to get the canola tariffs lifted to save the farm economy.
Have they given specific examples of the damage?
Yes. Premier Kinew, for instance, cited a painful concrete example. A major pork producer in Manitoba who has suffered a $19 million annual loss directly due to related trade disputes with China. He's making it tangible.
And Premier Moe in Saskatchewan.
Premier Moe has been equally forceful, warning explicitly that national industrial policy cannot come at the direct expense of prairie livelihoods. He stressed that Canada simply cannot afford to fight a two-front trade war, antagonizing both the U.S. and China simultaneously. The stability of that Chinese market is just too critical for their core industry.
Okay, so that's the very loud, very understandable plea from the agricultural sector. What about the other side, the industrial defense?
Well, the federal government, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, and the industrial regions, especially Ontario and Quebec, where auto manufacturing is concentrated, they're prioritizing a different, longer-term vision.
Which is?
They see the absolute necessity of safeguarding Canada's growing clean tech sector, and critically, the local auto manufacturing ecosystem. Billions have been invested in recent years, attracting battery plants, EV assembly lines, often with significant government subsidies based on the expectation of a protected North American market under CUSMA.
So dropping the tariffs now would undermine those investments.
That's the argument. Auto unions are vehemently opposed to dropping the EV tariffs. Influential figures like Ontario Premier Doug Ford are prioritizing the protection of those local assembly jobs, warning about a devastating flood of cheap EV imports from China that would just wipe out those nascent Canadian EV production lines before they even get going.
So the federal government is caught in the middle.
Completely caught. The federal agriculture minister, Heath MacDonald, is quoted as struggling to bridge this massive gap, stressing the need for a balanced long-term view that strengthens both farm and factory.
Easy to say, hard to do.
It's trying to square a circle that, politically and economically, seems almost impossible to square right now. There's no easy answer that satisfies both sides.
And hovering over this entire, very painful national debate is the immense, unblinking shadow of Washington.
Absolutely immovable.
Yeah.
It's the elephant in the room, or perhaps more accurately, the eagle perched next door.
Because even if Canada, purely on its own domestic economic merits, decided that accepting the Chinese deal save the farmers, get cheaper EVs was the best path, the U.S. has made it crystal clear that's not acceptable.
In no uncertain terms, Allied solidarity, maintaining that united front against China, comes first. The pressure from the Trump administration, according to these sources, has been relentless.
How has that pressure manifested?
Well, President Trump explicitly warned allies, publicly and privately, to maintain that united front on tariffs and tech restrictions against China. He even took the quite aggressive step of publicly canceling trade discussions with Ottawa after a Canadian government agency ran an advertisement that subtly seemed to criticize his tariff policies.
Sending a message.
A very clear message. And the threat goes deeper. He reportedly warned that the U.S. would be prepared to impose tariffs of up to 35% on Canadian exports if Ottawa took actions deemed to undermine U.S. security interests.
And letting Chinese EVs into the North American market via Canada would qualify.
That's the implication. That's the clear threat hanging over Ottawa. Access to the vital U.S. market is conditional on Canada towing the line regarding Chinese EVs and industrial policy.
And U.S. analysts, policymakers, they're worried about this specific scenario.
The backdoor fear.
Terrified of it. The fear is that if Canada does accept the Chinese deal and drops its 100% EV tariff, then those heavily subsidized Chinese EVs could potentially enter the integrated North American market through Canada. They could theoretically exploit the rules of origin within the CUSMA framework to bypass the U.S.'s own astronomical 247% tariffs.
Becoming a transshipment point.
Exactly. Whether that's practically feasible on a large scale is debatable, but the fear itself is politically potent in Washington. And that fear effectively strips Canada of much of its sovereign decision-making power in this trade dispute. It forces alignment with the U.S., regardless of the immediate economic cost to Canada's own agricultural sector.
So let's just lay out the potential outcomes for Canada again, because as you said, both paths seem paved with sacrifice.
They really are. Path 1, acceptance of the Chinese deal. The upside.
Immediate relief for the agricultural sector. Canola starts flowing again, prices potentially recover. Also, consumers get access to cheaper EVs, which is actually quite important given that Canadian EV sales reportedly dropped a concerning 39% in Q2 2025, largely due to high sticker prices and affordability issues.
Okay, so real benefits. The downside.
Intense diplomatic backlash from Washington, potential U.S. retaliatory tariffs, and arguably increased long-term reliance on China using this kind of coercive leverage in the future. You set a precedent.
Okay, path 2. Rejection. Sticking with the U.S. and EU.
The upside here is preserving those industrial auto jobs, particularly in Ontario, reinforcing the strategic alignment with the U.S.-EU bloc, maintaining access to the U.S. market, upholding the CUSMA framework.
The downside.
Deepening prolonged distress in the farm sector, low canola prices continuing, potentially well into 2026, without the massive buying power of the Chinese market, more pressure on rural economies.
So the core dilemma remains completely unresolved. It forces Canada to confront a fundamental question about its identity, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Is Canada fundamentally a resource-exporting nation that must prioritize the stability of its agricultural base and its farmers? Or is it striving to be an innovation-driven, advanced manufacturing economy that must protect its industrial sovereignty and technological future, even if that means short-term pain for commodities?
It's an incredibly unenviable choice.
And it perfectly highlights the immense difficulty all middle powers are facing in this world that's rapidly reorganizing itself around two competing, often hostile, economic and technological poles. There's less and less room to maneuver independently.
Which brings us neatly to the counter-narrative. While the West is busy building its tariff walls and allies like Canada are agonizing, China's EV giant BYD isn't just, sitting back and waiting for the political winds to change.
Not at all. They are aggressively, proactively adapting their entire global expansion strategy.
How? Where are they focusing?
Yeah. They are pivoting hard, shifting immense resources and focus towards the global south, particularly Latin America. They seem to view it as the world's next major EV growth frontier, precisely because it's outside those Western tariff walls.
Makes sense. If Market A slams the door, you knock harder on Market B's door.
It's a textbook geopolitical business response. If one major market becomes hostile or inaccessible, you diversify rapidly and build localized infrastructure elsewhere.
And their initial big ambition in Latin America, understandably, seemed focused on Mexico, right? Given its proximity to the U.S.?
Exactly. Mexico seemed like the logical first step, recognizing its huge potential as a manufacturing base and, crucially, as a potential North American gateway. BYD formally entered the Mexican market in late 2023.
And they had big plans.
Very ambitious goals. They were aiming for 100,000 EV sales in Mexico just this year, 2025. That would have been a massive six-fold leap from the previous year.
And the ultimate goal there was explicitly about getting around those U.S. tariffs, wasn't it?
The plan reported in our sources included a major manufacturing plant in Mexico, capable of producing 300,000 vehicles per year. The clear strategic intent was to leverage Mexico's geographical location and its participation in the USMCA trade agreement, taking advantage of nearshoring trends to potentially export EVs to the U.S. market, bypassing those sky-high Section 301 tariffs.
A strategic beachhead.
That was the vision. But that vision slammed into a very hard geopolitical roadblock.
What happened?
By mid-2025, that crucial factory plan was put indefinitely on pause, shelved.
Why?
Our sources clearly point to significant bureaucratic hurdles and, more importantly, political obstacles, the Mexican government applying the brakes, putting up heroes or objections.
Driven by?
Driven by intense U.S. pressure behind the scenes. Mexico is hugely dependent on the U.S. economically and politically. They are extremely cautious about antagonizing Washington by welcoming large-scale Chinese industrial investment, especially in a sector as sensitive as automotive manufacturing right on the U.S. border.
So the U.S. leaned on Mexico to block the BYD plant.
That appears to be the case. And adding insult to injury for Chinese EV makers, Mexico itself then proposed its own significant tariffs, 50% on all Chinese vehicles, both EVs and traditional combustion engine models.
Why would Mexico do that?
It seems like an attempt by Mexico to protect its own established domestic auto manufacturers, many of which are subsidiaries of U.S., European, or Japanese firms, and also to position itself as a more attractive destination for foreign direct investment that aligns comfortably with U.S. strategic interests rather than facilitating Chinese industrial goals that Washington opposes.
So BYD's Mexican gateway strategy stalled.
Stalled, yes, but not entirely abandoned. It forced BYD to adapt its plan in Mexico quite dramatically. Even with the factory plan paused indefinitely, they still went ahead and opened their large national distribution center in Edomex, the state of Mexico, in October 2025.
What's the purpose of that center?
It's a major logistics hub, crucial for managing vehicle inventory, spare parts distribution, and coordinating after-sales service, not just for Mexico, but potentially for the wider Latin American region.
So it signals they're still committed to the market.
It signals they're playing the long game. Even if local manufacturing is delayed and they have to rely on selling imported vehicles for now, likely facing those new 50% Mexican tariffs, they are building the necessary infrastructure to support sales and service, betting on future growth in the region.
Okay, so Mexico proved politically complicated, largely due to U.S. influence. But you mentioned another country where BYD's strategy is not stalled, where it's been a massive success story.
Yes, Brazil. Brazil has become the absolute centerpiece, the crown jewel of BYD's Global South pivot. It's moving full steam ahead, seemingly without the kind of political interference seen in Mexico.
Tell us about Brazil. What's happening there?
Brazil represents an undeniable major victory for BYD's globalization strategy. On October 9, 2025, BYD officially inaugurated its massive manufacturing complex in Camaçari in the state of Bahia.
How massive? What's the investment?
The total investment is $5.5 billion Brazilian reais, which translates to roughly $1 billion US.
$1 billion. That's significant.
Hugely significant. This isn't just a token assembly plant. It is BYD's single largest industrial investment anywhere in the world outside of Asia. It cements Brazil as a true cornerstone of their global manufacturing footprint.
And there's some symbolism attached to the location, too, isn't there?
Oh, the symbolism is incredibly potent and widely reported. The entire BYD complex is built on the site of a former Ford manufacturing plant.
The one Ford shut down.
Exactly. Ford abandoned that Camaçari site just 4 years earlier, back in 2021, as part of its global restructuring, causing significant local economic disruption and political fallout in Brazil.
So BYD coming in and reviving it.
It's a huge political win for the Brazilian government, particularly President Lula da Silva's administration. They could frame it as an industrial renaissance, attracting cutting-edge green technology investment to replace the old departing industries. The new complex is expected to generate around 20,000 direct and indirect jobs, revitalizing that key manufacturing region in Bahia. Lula reportedly hailed it as proof that Brazil can lead its own green industrial revolution, with partners from the global south.
And how is BYD performing in the Brazilian market itself?
The market dominance they have achieved there is astonishingly rapid. By 2024, just a year or so after seriously entering the market, BYD had already captured a commanding 74% market share in Brazil's combined EV and plug-in hybrid segment.
74%. Wow.
And the growth continues. Sales reportedly surged another 46% year over year in just the first 5 months of 2025 alone.
So Brazil is becoming a major revenue source for them.
Critically important. Sources estimate that Brazil now contributes roughly 1/3 of BYD's total overseas revenue. It's rapidly transformed from a peripheral market into a vital strategic hedge against those Western tariff walls and market access issues.
And is the localization strategy in Brazil just about assembling cars? Or is it deeper?
It goes much deeper than simple assembly. The Camaçari plant has an initial production target of 150,000 vehicles per year, but it's designed to be scalable up to potentially 600,000 units annually if demand warrants. But crucially, the complex also includes a dedicated battery recycling plant right on site, addressing end-of-life environmental concerns. And significantly, it includes a solar panel assembly line as well.
So they're integrating into Brazil's broader clean energy ecosystem.
Exactly. It positions BYD not just as a car seller, but as a comprehensive clean energy partner for Brazil, investing across the value chain, creating skilled jobs, and aligning with Brazil's own energy transition goals. A very smart, integrated approach. And if we connect this massive investment in Brazil to their actual product development, well, BYD's approach there reveals what I think is a crucial, almost revolutionary strategy.
Oh, so?
They seem to be deliberately engineering their technology, not just to follow the, let's say, pure electrification dogma often pushed in the West.
Right, the only pure EVs count idea.
Exactly. Instead, they're tailoring their tech specifically for local energy realities, existing infrastructure constraints, and even local fuel sources in the global south. And this is where the Western narrative about how the EV transition must happen gets seriously challenged.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What specifically did they unveil in Brazil?
This is where it gets really interesting. On October 14th, 2025, just days after the splashy factory opening in Camaçari, BYD unveiled a revolutionary new powertrain system.
What was it?
A biofuel plug-in hybrid system. It's reportedly a world-first integration that combines the efficiency benefits of a modern plug-in hybrid, PHEV, with full flex fuel capability.
Flex fuel, meaning it can run on.
It can run seamlessly on any blend of standard gasoline and ethanol, all the way from E0 pure gasoline up to E100 pure ethanol.
Which is huge in Brazil, given their massive sugarcane ethanol industry.
Absolutely critical. Brazil has decades of experience and widespread infrastructure for ethanol fuel. This technology embraces that reality instead of ignoring it.
And the system has a name.
Yes, it's an adaptation of their existing DMI, dual-mode intelligent superhybrid system, but specifically re-engineered for the Brazilian market. The core innovation is that highly localized 1.5-liter flex fuel engine.
Developed locally.
Developed through a collaboration between over 100 Chinese and Brazilian engineers, working together specifically to optimize the engine and the control systems to handle the high ethanol concentrations common across Brazil, ensuring durability and performance.
Now, is this just a standard hybrid, or is it different? You mentioned PHEV and DMI.
It's crucial to understand this is not your typical parallel hybrid technology, where the engine and motor often fight for control. The DMI system fundamentally prioritizes electric drive.
Meaning
the car is propelled by the electric motor the vast majority of the time, providing that smooth, instant torque EV feel. The specially adapted 1.5-liter flex fuel internal combustion engine functions primarily as a highly efficient generator onboard.
to charge the battery.
Exactly. It kicks in automatically to recharge the battery pack when needed, or it can provide supplemental power under very high load conditions. but it's not directly driving the wheels most of the time. This minimizes reliance on external charging infrastructure and avoids that sometimes clunky, non-linear feel you get from older hybrid designs.
Okay, so what are the advantages of this approach? Technical, environmental, practical.
Well, the technical advantages are manifold, and they seem perfectly designed to address the major constraints consumers face, especially in developing economies or large countries like Brazil. First, range.
Range anxiety is still a big barrier.
Huge. This system pretty much eliminates it. The total combined range is fantastic, reportedly clocking in between 1,090 and 1,200 kilometers on a full tank of fuel and a full battery charge.
Over 1,000 kilometers. That's massive.
Massive. And fuel efficiency, even when the engine is running in hybrid mode to generate electricity, is incredible. Sources cite figures often ranging between 3.0 and 5.3 liters per 100 kilometers, depending on the driving cycle. It mitigates infrastructure anxiety perfectly. You just fill up like a normal car if you need to.
Okay, what about the environmental angle, using ethanol?
That's a key selling point, especially in Brazil. Sugarcane-based ethanol, which dominates Brazil's biofuel production, is widely considered a carbon-neutral or near-carbon-neutral fuel because the sugarcane absorbs co-euro as it grows. By integrating this readily available, domestically produced renewable fuel into their advanced PHEV system, BYD claims the vehicle can reduce well-to-wheel co-euro emissions by up to 50% compared to traditional gasoline hybrids running only on fossil fuel.
And does that align with Brazilian policy?
Perfectly. It directly supports Brazil's crucial national environmental policy called RenovaBio, which mandates specific decarbonization targets for the entire fuel distribution sector and incentivizes the use of biofuels. BYD can market this as the greenest practical option for Brazilian roads.
Okay, and from the consumer's day-to-day pragmatic point of view?
It's arguably a brilliant market solution for Brazil right now. First, as we said, it completely eliminates range anxiety. You always have the flex fuel engine as a backup, and fuel stations are everywhere. No waiting for chargers.
And cost?
Big factor. It allows consumers to potentially save significant money at the pump because ethanol often costs 20 to 30% less than gasoline in Brazil, depending on market fluctuations. It makes electrified, lower-emission mobility instantly more affordable and convenient for the average Brazilian driver without needing massive immediate investment in public charging.
So it hits the sweet spot of range, cost, convenience, and environmental benefit within the local context.
Precisely. And this technology wasn't just launched quietly. They made a statement with it.
How so?
The technology debuted in a special version of one of their popular SUV models called the Song Pro COP30 Special Edition.
COP30, the climate conference.
Exactly. The upcoming UN Climate Change Conference, COP30, is scheduled to be held in Belém, Brazil in November 2025. BYD donated 30 of these new flex-fuel hybrid vehicles directly to the conference organizers.
Ah, very visible.
Very visible. It visually underscores their commitment to providing locally adapted, genuinely sustainable mobility solutions, positioning themselves as a partner in Brazil's environmental leadership on the world stage. It's smart marketing tied to real innovation.
And what are the broader, maybe global implications of this flex fuel hybrid model? Does it stop at Brazil?
I think the global implications could be really significant. BYD's approach here directly challenges that fundamental one-size-fits-all pure EV model that's often pushed by Western manufacturers and policymakers who sometimes insist that only pure battery electric vehicles, BEVs, qualify as truly green or count towards transition goals.
That's showing another way.
They're demonstrating forcefully that sustainability can and perhaps should be tailored to specific regional energy resources, existing infrastructure realities, and consumer affordability constraints. It's pragmatism over dogma.
And could this platform be used elsewhere?
Absolutely. This isn't just limited to Brazil's very mature ethanol infrastructure. Think about other major markets. India, for example, is aggressively pursuing E20 fuel adoption, 20% ethanol blend nationwide.
Right.
A system like this could be easily adapted for India. Or think about Southeast Asia, countries like Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, where biofuel production is significant. But EV charging networks are still very nascent outside major cities.
So it could be a key differentiator for BYD in those rapidly growing markets.
Exactly. It's genuinely seen by some analysts as a potential model for South-South collaboration, offering a non-Western-led, practical, and potentially faster pathway for the green transition in the developing world.
It shifts the competition, doesn't it?
It really does. It shifts the focus away from just who have the biggest battery factory or the longest pure EV range towards who can design and deploy the most efficient, affordable, and locally relevant sustainable mobility solution for diverse global markets.
It's a strategic move to potentially dominate markets that the pure EV-focused Western manufacturers have either largely ignored or have insisted must make an immediate, difficult leap straight to 100% battery electric.
Okay, so here's where this entire deep dive seems to coalesce around one central, powerful theme, doesn't it?
Feels that way.
We've watched Canada agonizing over this impossible choice between Washington and Beijing, potentially sacrificing its vital farming communities on the altar of industrial policy alignment.
A painful dilemma.
Meanwhile, halfway across the world, BYD effectively bypasses that conflict, chooses Brazil, reopens a former Ford factory to local acclaim, and literally invents a new, customized engine tailored precisely to local energy policy and resources.
A stark contrast in approaches.
And we're left staring at this profound paradox at the very heart of all this green protectionism.
The paradox is stark, isn't it? These tariffs, these walls, they're implemented with the stated goal and often the real effect of safeguarding domestic jobs, whether that's U.S. auto workers, Canadian assembly plants, or European battery firms. That's the justification.
But they carry immense immediate economic costs that ripple outwards. We see major companies, even Western champions like Tesla, publicly warning about the impact. Tesla apparently flagged $1 to $2 billion in added annual costs purely due to restrictions on sourcing cheaper Chinese batteries and critical components.
So the inputs get more expensive.
Exactly. And that cost has to go somewhere.
And ultimately, that cost is borne by the consumer.
Overwhelmingly. The tariffs inevitably raise the final sticker price of electric vehicles. Estimates suggest prices could be 20 to 30% higher in the U.S. market, specifically because of these measures, compared to what they might have been otherwise.
And when EV prices jump that much,
Adoption slows down significantly, especially for mass market buyers. We're already seeing major international bodies, like the International Energy Agency, IEA, revising down their forecasts for the speed of global EV deployment.
So the policy designed to boost the domestic green industry might actually be slowing down the overall green transition globally.
That's the collision. It's exactly the conflict that economist Guntram Wolff pointed out, quoted in our sources. We are watching climate goals collide with industrial politics. The understandable desire for nations to win the green industrial race, to capture those future jobs and tech leadership, it's directly impeding the speed and efficiency of the very transition we are supposed to be collaborating on globally to save the planet.
Wow. So this standoff, this trade war, it's actively creating something new, a split.
Yes.
Yeah.
Analysts are increasingly describing it as a slow-motion bifurcation, a gradual but seemingly permanent splitting of the global economy into two parallel, increasingly separate green ecosystems.
Describe those two ecosystems.
On one side, you have the Western-aligned ecosystem. It's high cost, heavily subsidized domestically, focused on onshoring, and protected by these massive tariff walls and complex regulations like the IRA sourcing rules.
Okay. And the other side?
The other side is largely Chinese-led. It's focused on leveraging scale, driving down costs, diversifying its technology portfolio like the flex fuel hybrid, and pivoting aggressively towards growth markets in the global south. Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East. Markets often hungry for affordable green tech without the political baggage.
And as this fragmentation accelerates, companies worldwide have to react, don't they?
They have no choice. They naturally seek out the path of least political resistance. They look for the tariff-neutral routes, the places where they can produce and sell without getting caught in the geopolitical crossfire.
Which is why we're seeing.
Which is why countries like Mexico, despite the BYD plant issue, it's still a huge hub for others.
Yeah.
India, Vietnam, parts of Eastern Europe, maybe North Africa. They're rapidly emerging as critical new production hubs. Not always because they offer the absolute lowest cost or best logistics, but because they offer a politically safer, tariff-neutral base to operate from.
So it's fragmented globalization. Production decisions driven more by avoiding political risk and punitive duties than by pure economic efficiency.
Precisely. It adds layers of complexity and cost throughout global supply chains. And this raises, I think, an important overarching question for you, the listener, to consider as you process all this.
Yeah.
This battle for the future of green mobility. It's now fundamentally become a test of strategic identity for nations around the world.
So.
We'll take Canada again. The choice they face is almost existential. Do you define yourself primarily as a resource-exporting nation whose core interest lies in prioritizing the stability of your agricultural base and your farmers, even if it means accommodating China? Or do you commit fully to becoming an innovation-driven, advanced manufacturing economy, protecting your nascent industrial sovereignty in cutting-edge sectors like EVs, even if that means enduring significant short-term economic pain in traditional sectors and aligning completely with the U.S. bloc? There's no easy middle ground left.
And the ultimate irony hanging over this entire deep dive. It's undeniable, isn't it? And deeply frustrating.
It is. Both the U.S. and China, the two main antagonists in this trade war, are nominally racing towards the same long-term goal: net zero emissions. Both are committed, at least on paper, to electrifying their economies, deploying renewables, and cutting global emissions.
A shared objective.
A theoretically shared objective. Yet, their deep-seated and frankly escalating geopolitical rivalry, their competition for technological supremacy and global influence, now risks significantly slowing down the global progress towards that shared goal.
We might still get there.
We may still reach net zero eventually. But as one diplomat was quoted saying in our readings reflecting on this fractured landscape, it's increasingly clear we will not get there together. The path will be fragmented, less efficient, more expensive, and potentially much slower because of this rivalry.
The economic and political forces driving this fragmentation seem incredibly powerful right now.
Immensely powerful. And the ultimate cost of this bifurcation in terms of higher prices for consumers globally, slower adoption of clean technologies, duplicated investments, and less efficient supply chains, that cost will likely be borne by consumers everywhere, and arguably by the planet itself due to the delayed climate action.
The future of clean mobility, it seems, is being decided less in the R&D labs.
And more in the closed-door meetings of trade commissions, presidential offices, and politburos, as they attempt to reshape the global economic map according to strategic interests rather than collaborative necessity.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final thought then. Something for you to mull over or maybe explore on your own after this deep dive.
Okay.
Consider BYD's flex fuel hybrid technology that we discussed in Brazil. If that highly pragmatic approach, blending electrification with local biofuels, solving range anxiety and infrastructure constraints, proves to be genuinely successful, not just in Brazil, but potentially across the vast developing economies of the global south, could that kind of proven regional adaptation eventually put pressure back on the West? Could it force the US and the EU down the line to perhaps drop their more rigid one-size-fits-all pure EV mandates and embrace more localized, pragmatic, maybe even hybrid-inclusive solutions themselves in order to effectively compete and meet diverse global energy realities? Or will the walls just stay up?